I'm delighted to be here with all of you today here at Open Azure Day. Has to be done virtually because, well, that's how it's these days. I love open source, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about open source and Azure Data now and next. A bit about me. I'm Sunil Kamath, and I'm part of the Azure Data team here at Microsoft. I live in the Seattle neighborhood, and I have been at Microsoft for about 5 years, and I have been working on everything data for over 20 years. Now, as I go deeper into the topic of open source at Microsoft and Azure Data in particular, I would like to draw your attention to this following quote from our CEO, Satya Nadella. The above quote underscores the belief in the power of communities. Community makes all the difference. Today's communities are not limited by the corporate boundaries. Of course, open source is super important to the fast-paced development we see today. But most importantly are the people coming together to help each other out. And as the world has changed, Microsoft has gone through its own evolution. With the development and investments we have been making in open source, our commitment to the community is stronger than ever. It's our ability to work together that helps our dreams become reality. And we are dedicated to cultivating and growing communities to do just that. I imagine most of you have your own journey with open source. Whether it's simply using open source software or some contributions, or be it code, or be it anything really, there are lots of ways to engage and contribute to open source. Every little contribution is valued and super appreciated. My own journey with open source started back in Toronto, Canada in 2000. As a database performance engineer working on Linux, my first role out of the college was optimizing Linux operating system for databases to achieve the best performance and scalability. I had the distinct privilege to work on improving Linux memory management, tune scheduler algorithms, optimize file I/O management, etc. The focus and the contributions made by many in the community to optimize Linux for critical workloads such as databases directly led to Linux becoming the mainstream operating system of choice to run databases. That, in my mind, is the power of community as a whole, which is greater than the sum of its parts. Here at Microsoft, I head up products for all our open source related relational databases. Over 3 years ago, I helped to launch MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB open source databases as a fully managed service on Azure. It has been humbling to see the massive growth in adoption of these services. I am here today representing all of Azure Data, not just my work with open source databases, and not all of Azure, since I definitely wouldn't be able to do any justice, but rather to represent our Azure Data team here at Microsoft. The power of data-driven intelligence to change the world is almost without limit. The massive amounts of data getting generated together with advances in AI and the power of cloud are enabling organizations to extract insights in fast and cost-effective ways. And our mission in Azure Data is here to deliver the one data platform that empowers the world to make sense of all of the data anywhere, responsibly, and at any scale. Within Azure Data, we now have comprehensive open source data products ranging from relational databases to Hadoop, Spark, etc. Literally every product or service, we use some sort of open source technology. There are 3 ways we participate in open source. On our team, the first way is we contribute to existing projects or release new projects. And I will cover just a few examples today in the areas of Spark, Postgres, and Onyx. The second way we participate in open source is to enable all of you. So for example, we make lots of open source offerings available as a PaaS service, underscoring our commitment to customer choice and flexibility, so that it is easier for you to focus on your apps. The third way we participate in open source is that we integrate with open source technologies. A great example here is SQL Server, our own proprietary database, which combines and continues to embrace open source from SQL Server 2017, support for Linux and containers to SQL Server 2019, now embracing Spark and HDFS to bring you a unified data platform. This also extends to support for Cassandra API, Gremlin API, etc. as part of our Azure CosmosDB offering as well. The first way we participate in open source by contributing and by giving back to the community. I'm going to walk you through 3 pretty interesting examples of how we contribute to these open source communities. Apache Spark, Postgres, and then Onyx in the machine learning space. Okay, so let's dive into this super interesting technology that most of you are familiar with, Apache Spark. Apache Spark is a fast, unified analytics engine for big data and machine learning and was originally developed at UC Berkeley in 2009. And I want to walk you through a few of our recent contributions to this wonderful open source community. You might already know that we invested in Databricks last year. You might not know, though, that members of our engineering team submit quite a few contributions to Spark in the form of bug fixes, improvements, and also features. We open sourced Data Accelerator, a project to help write Spark streaming apps faster. There's Hyperspace, an indexing subsystem for Spark, which we open sourced earlier this year. And then there are all sorts of contributions to other Apache projects that didn't make it into all of this timeline, including our contributions to the Yarn Federation and Project Mercury for Yarn back in 2017 and 2018. And while I'm talking about Yarn, I want to shine a light on the fact that you can contribute to open source communities in ways that go beyond just code. For example, several of our team have been release managers for the Yarn project too. The Postgres community openly describes Postgres as the world's advanced open source relational database. Postgres is one of the most loved open source database, and this community has done a phenomenal job over the years. Next, I want to talk about how we are contributing to this particular community. When it comes to Postgres, Microsoft is all in. Did you know Microsoft now has over 100 plus years of combined Postgres experience in-house? And our 4 prolific Postgres committers that are working hand in glove with the larger Postgres community around the world to improve and make Postgres better with every release. To achieve committer status is hard. It represents their long and distinguished contributions. We are extremely proud of their work. You can learn more about the work that we are doing via the short URL link you can see on the screen. Here's one example where one of our Postgres committers, engineer named Anders Front, focused on analyzing the limits of Postgres connection scalability. He recently published this awesome blog. Now, if you want to understand this problem space, this blog is a great source. Anders also published a post on measuring the memory overhead of a Postgres connection. Anders has been very busy working to improve this and also published a blog on the work he's contributing to the next Postgres 14 release. And this is in the area of how to improve Postgres connection scalability. While I'm on the topic about Postgres, I also want to share about the work we are doing on Citus, an open source extension to Postgres. What Citus does is it transforms Postgres into a distributed database, and therefore you never have to worry about the limits to Postgres scaling. Whether your database size is as small as 100 gigabytes or large petabyte plus, you can benefit from Citus to reduce your query latency, increase your application throughput, while also helping scale database operations such as backup, restore, indexing, vacuuming, yes, vacuuming too, etc. And also, because it is an extension, Citus supports new Postgres releases and allows you to benefit from new features while maintaining full compatibility with existing Postgres tools. And here on the screen, you will see a screenshot of the Citus open source GitHub repo with a short URL to make it easy for you to find. You can download this for free and use it with any community Postgres releases. Another one of our open source contributions to Postgres is the PG auto failover, another extension to Postgres from our engineer Dimitri Fontaine. The motivation to add PG auto failover was to simplify the management of high availability and failover for Postgres databases. Besides these, we have contributed and maintained several other open source extensions to Postgres. Things like pgcron, topen, CStore, etc. Check out this link to learn more about all of these. Now let's switch gears and talk about another space we are contributing, in the space of machine learning. ONNX stands for Open Neural Network Exchange. Microsoft and a community of partners created ONNX as an open standard for representing machine learning models. Models from many frameworks including TensorFlow, PyTorch, MATLAB, SparkML, etc. can be exported or converted to standard ONNX format. Once the models are in the ONNX format, they can run on a variety of platforms and devices. ONNX Runtime is a high-performance inference engine for deploying ONNX models to production. It is used in high-scale Microsoft services such as Bing, Office, and also Azure Cognitive Services. It enables acceleration of machine learning inferencing across all of your deployment targets using a single set of API. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about the second door. That second door, we participate in open source by enabling you to use open source more easily as a fully managed service in the cloud or even in hybrid scenarios. So I'm going to walk you all through 5 different open source technology areas where we are making it easier for you to use open source. Let's talk about MySQL, an open source relational database. Azure Database for MySQL is an enterprise-grade cloud-native managed service using the community edition of MySQL. It offers many built-in capabilities and integrations to help you focus on your application, and also it provides ML-powered intelligence such as query insights, query performance recommendations, and advanced threat protection to ensure your database is fully protected from many of these attack vectors. Recently, in September, we announced the preview of Flexible Server. It's a new deployment option for Azure Database for MySQL. We built Flexible Server because we listened to developers and they really wanted the manageability benefits of a complete PaaS solution, but had a hard time giving up the control of what they could get running in a VM. Flexible Server provides similar level of control and performance in what you would get on a VM, but with all the benefits of a PaaS. Now, isn't that better? Flexible Server is designed to improve developer productivity and help you save costs. Built on Azure Core Compute Networking and Storage, we have added support for burstables that help you get started with as little as $12. You can start databases, instances, and have full control in your hands on when you want to apply maintenance patches, as an example, with the flexibility to deploy with a single or full zonal redundancy for maximum resiliency. You also now have control on customizing several of the MySQL parameters and ability to deploy your database in a managed VNet. To illustrate how easy it is to create a MySQL database, let me show you how you create a MySQL Flexible Server. With this simple one command, your database is created and secured in a managed VNet. If you are into gaming, you are most likely familiar with Minecraft, aren't you? Did you know MySQL is the database powering this? This blog, titled Migrating Minecraft Realms from AWS to Azure, describes the successful migration of Minecraft Realms, which is a Minecraft's private multiplayer server hosting service, from AWS to Azure. It is worth highlighting that this migration process was completely invisible to most players, and their deployment on Azure are now simpler with more efficient resource utilization and also more flexibility that they have achieved in their architecture. Would encourage you to read this blog, and it has details about the migration planning and also useful tips from the Minecraft team themselves. Let's next talk about Redis. For years, developers have utilized the speed and throughput of Redis to produce unbeatable responsiveness and scale in their applications. We have seen tremendous adoption of Azure Cache for Redis, our managed solution built on open source Redis, as Azure customers have leveraged Redis performance as a distributed cache, session store, and message broker. The incorporation of the Redis Labs Redis enterprise technology extends the range of use cases in which developers can utilize Redis while providing enhanced operational resiliency and security. With the integration of Redis Labs technology with Azure Cache for Redis, customers can now access Redis Labs developed modules including Redis Search, Redis Bloom, and also Redis Time Series, which provides new data structures that will further enable use cases like data analytics and machine learning. Customer will also now have the option to deploy SSD flash storage, offering up to 10 times larger cache sizes and similar performance levels at a lower price per gigabyte. Reliability will be even greater priority with an enhanced SLA and the capability to utilize active geo-replication to configure a globally available cache that can fail over to another region without any data loss. Next up is Databricks, one of our partners and a company we made investment back in 2019. Azure Databricks is a jointly developed data and AI service from Databricks and Microsoft, and is used for data engineering, data science, analytics, and machine learning. Azure Databricks is a first-party Microsoft service to provide Databricks Apache server-based analytics service as an integral part of the Microsoft Azure platform. We have ensured this offering is natively integrated within Microsoft Azure in a number of ways, ranging from a single click start to unified billing. Azure Databricks leverages Azure's security and seamlessly integrates with Azure services such as Azure Active Directory, Azure Synapse Analytics, and also Power BI. Next up is Azure HDinsight. Azure HDinsight is a fully managed service for your open source big data needs. With HDinsight, customers get all the benefits of open source analytics, but with the security, cost control, and enterprise readiness of Azure. Since our inception, we have dedicated to the spirit and the community of open source. Starting in August 2020, we transitioned Azure HDinsight to a Microsoft engineered distribution of Apache Hadoop and Spark, built to drastically improve the performance and optimized to natively run at cloud scale. We remain 100% committed to open and work with this open source community to contribute our innovations back to the Apache project itself. Let me quickly share the story of a company that offered taxi hailing and food delivery. Their application needed to do real-time data processing that they can leverage to get insights so that they can give their customers better service. You can imagine things like shorter wait times, best possible routes from here to there, food delivery recommendations, etc. Azure HDinsight has given them a way to manage their big data workloads. Azure Database for Postgres is also a fully managed PaaS solution built using the community version of Postgres. We have made it enterprise ready with advanced security and intelligent performance capabilities that help you to optimize and get the best performance. We are thrilled to see the massive growth in adoption. Again, just like MySQL, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Postgres Flexible Server is also a new deployment option, providing similar level of control and performance in what you would get on a VM with all the benefits of a PaaS. Please check out the short URL link here on the screen to learn more. To highlight some of the key things we focused on for Flexible Server, one was simplified developer experience and performance that helps improve your productivity. Second was reducing cost via burstables and ability to stop and start databases. And third, and more importantly, was full control and flexibility in your hands for meeting your mission critical needs. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about Citus. I discussed that as part of our contributions already. What I want to focus here is our hyperscale Citus deployment option, part of the same Azure Database for Postgres service. Hyperscale Citus is a fully managed cloud-native deployment option to scale out your single node Postgres. Underneath, it uses the same open source Citus extension. Here on this slide, you can see how hyperscale Citus works to distribute your query to run in parallel across all the nodes. This illustration shows 3 worker nodes, and where you can also see that you can add more nodes on the fly. You can redistribute data across all the nodes in online fashion, and while all the transactions continue to execute. I talked about how scaling out Postgres with Citus opens the door to new possibilities. Here is a customer example Helsinki Region Transport Authority in Finland on their use of Postgres Hyperscale Citus. It was a whole different environment once we moved to Hyperscale Citus, they quote. Queries that often took up to 10 minutes with the old system are now processed instantaneously. That's the magic of Postgres Hyperscale. Along with much better performance, moving to a hyperscale has reduced operational cost for this customer by over 50%. Another one I would like to reference is from our own internal team here within Microsoft, who uses Postgres and Citus running on Azure. Minwei here says distributed Postgres is a game changer. We can support more than 6 million queries every day on 2 petabytes of data. With Citus, response times for 75% of the queries are less than 0.2 seconds. Check this blog out to learn more about this use case from our Windows Data and Intelligence team. This workload is powering an analytics dashboard. It captures over 20,000 different types of metrics from over 800 million devices, supporting hundreds of concurrent users. It's a huge deployment, making it possible to make ship room decisions for Windows. Okay, so now let's talk about how we use Kubernetes along with Postgres and SQL Server. Until now, I talked about how we enable open source technologies as a service in public Azure. I would like to share that we have also been working to make these Azure database services run anywhere. A new capability enabled by Azure Arc that allows you to run on-premises, multi-cloud, and also edge. Using Kubernetes as the hardware of your choice. Azure Arc enables SQL Managed Instance and Azure Arc enabled Postgres Hyperscale are available in preview now, with other services to come over time. Check out the short URL link to learn more. Travis Wright, my colleague, has done an awesome job explaining this at more depth. Okay, so now let's talk about the third way that our team at Azure Data participates in open source. How we integrate with open source. I'm just going to cover one example in this section of how we integrate with. Of course, I shared an example of SQL Server earlier on. Here, I'm going to talk about Cassandra and Gremlin. With Azure CosmosDB, we have protocol level integration. The promise is you can access your data in Azure Cosmos DB using the same framework, same drivers, same tooling that you use to access Cassandra and Gremlin. And then make that data more flexible and scalable to power web applications, recommendation engines, real-time personalization, and also supply chain management. Here you see a large national retailer has used their API for Gremlin with Azure Cosmos DB to ingest large volumes of localization and inventory data. They use this data to power an online product recommendation engine, which is dynamically informed by in-store product availability. Now, in preparing for this talk, I got to discover and learn myself about all the open source activities that our team here within Azure Data are working on. To be honest with all of you, I was pretty much floored. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are even more open source projects that I wanted to talk about today, but just couldn't fit them all in. So now what? I would like to draw your attention to other outstanding talks happening at Open Azure Day. I'm sure you will love all of them. As I now begin to wrap up my talk, I want to leave you with a parting gift. A link to a video featuring Stephen Hawking. He encourages to working with communities and raises the importance of open platforms and how it helps accelerate innovation. Although Stephen Hawking is no longer with us, his inspiration and thoughts will forever be with us. Sometimes those of us who work on open source feel like we are standing on the shoulders of giants. That we get so much benefit from the work done by others in the community so we can build on top of existing rock-solid open source software rather than reinventing the wheel each time. With that, it's now time for me to say thank you for tuning in and listening to my talk. I am leaving you with my Twitter handle. On behalf of my entire team here in Azure Data, thank you so very much.